morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us from around the world. My name is Katja Major, and I'm the Senior Program Manager for the VETS program at Veterinarians Without Borders North America. I'm so pleased to welcome you to our special World Environment Day webinar. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that Veterinarians Without Borders staff, board members, volunteers, and supporters live and work on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples across North America, communities who have cared for these lands for thousands of years. Our head office in Ottawa is located on the unceded and unsurrendered territories of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation. We are grateful for the opportunity to live, learn, and work in these spaces, and we commit to ongoing reflection, respect, and reconciliation in all that we do. World Environment Day, observed each year on June 5th, which is today, is a global call to action to protect and restore our planet. To mark the day, we've brought together a panel of VWB's VETS volunteers to explore how community-driven innovations are making tangible environmental impact. Today's panelists will share first-hand experiences from Cambodia, Kenya, and Laos, where they've worked with local partners on initiatives like regenerative farming, composting, and biogas, as well as integrated One Health systems that address the climate crisis at the community level. We welcome your active participation. So please, after the panel presentations, we'll host a live Q&A session where you can engage directly with our speakers. You're welcome to submit your questions at any time using the little Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen, and we'll gather the questions and address as many as possible during the discussion. So today's event is part of our VETS program, which is short for Volunteers Engaged in Gender-Responsive Technical Solutions. Funded by Global Affairs Canada, VETS places skilled volunteers with local organizations to strengthen animal health systems, support climate-smart agriculture, and promote sustainable livelihoods through a One Health approach. From 2020 to 2028, the VETS program aims to mobilize more than 190 volunteers, working across local partners in 6 countries: Cambodia, Ghana, Kenya, Laos, Senegal, and Vietnam. Together with local partners, VETS is tackling critical issues at the intersection of human, animal, and environmental health. As you may know, this year's World Environment Day is themed Land Restoration, Desertification, and Drought Resilience. It's a powerful reminder that sustainable land use is not just about conservation. It's about equity, livelihoods, food security, and the health of our planet. That's why today we're highlighting stories from 3 of our recent VETS program volunteers who have worked alongside local partners to implement climate-smart, community-led solutions that restore ecosystems and build resilience from the soil up. You'll hear from our 3 panelists who recently completed placements in Cambodia, Kenya, and Laos, each bringing a unique lens to this work, from regenerative agriculture and circular farming systems to integrated One Health strategies. We'll begin with short presentations from each speaker. First, we'll hear from Rudy. Harold brings over 4 decades of experience in agriculture extension and environmental stewardship. He is the former executive officer of the Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association and a longtime champion of sustainable land use and soil health. As a VETS volunteer, Harold recently completed a placement in Cambodia, where he worked with AVSF and its local partner PMUAC to develop regenerative farming practices and improve access to low-cost soil testing tools, helping farmers make better decisions and restore fertility to their land. Next, we'll hear from Donald Hilborn. Donald is a retired agriculture engineer who spent 37 years with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Affairs. He has deep expertise in livestock systems, nutrient management, and energy efficiency. This was Donald's second VETS placements in Kenya, where he supported Wakulima Dairy in improving composting, optimizing biogas slurry use, and advancing circular farming techniques that connect livestock to the land in a more sustainable way. And finally, we'll hear from Alina Kota-Merlo. Alina is a veterinarian and recent graduate of the Ontario Veterinary College. She brings a strong passion for One Health and gender equity. She is currently on her second VETS placement and is joining us live today from Laos. Through her work with Care Laos, Alina is supporting efforts to build integrated community-led systems that prevent zoonotic disease and promote environmental health through a One Health lens. We're so excited to have all three of you with us today, so thank you so much for being here. So we will begin. Harold, over to you. Please go ahead and share your screen and take it away.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity. First of all, I'd like to thank Global Affairs Canada, Veterinarians Without Borders, and the sorry, I missed the name here, but the sponsors out of Cambodia who arranged all my travel and logistics. The Cambodia is made up of 24 provinces. The big circle on the bottom is the capital, Phnom Penh. The circle on the left, Siem Reap, where the ancient temples are. And the circle up in the top in the green, Pre-Vihir, is the province where I contributed for close to 3 months. So you can see that there's quite a distance between the capital and Pre-Vihir province, good 6 to 8 hour drive traveling by vehicle up through that area. My presentation is going to cover the challenges in soil health and the steps that we implemented, opportunities for new crops, very briefly, and how can a 3-month assignment generate a lasting impact. First of all, my host in Pre-Vihir province was the Pre-Vihir Minche Union of Agricultural Cooperatives. This is their head office in the capital of the province, Tibang Minche, and there is a warehouse there as well. I'm going to refer to this as the Rice Union because it's a long name, but this Rice Union is made up of 25 cooperative members from around the province, encompassing about 5,000 growers, mostly smallholder farmers, and pretty much all focused on rice. The Rice Union doesn't actually receive and deliver rice. It arranges for marketing contracts, it deals with logistics, provides training both to staff and to farmers. So it's a very well-established now coordinating body that has a lot of respect in that area. There's the president sitting at his computer in the office. I have to say that everyone that I bumped into is very tech savvy. Internet is available virtually everywhere. Cell phones, everybody has a cell phone, and excellent cell service, and also high voltage electrical lines, which are serviced in their local communities. So in the first week, I very quickly got orientated about rice growing. And there's an example of a really nice looking field out in the country. There's a photo of one of the local co-ops, and it just so happened that when I arrived, the auditors were there to inspect the rice fields. These auditors are from EcoCert. EcoCert is centered out of France, but they're active in, I believe, about 130 countries around the world. So the two gentlemen on the left are the EcoCert auditors. The gentleman on my left is the president of that local union. And then the other folks there are most of them are the staff, part-time staff that work for the local cooperative in terms of farmer training. And there's a lot of paperwork involved in organic certification. And so these folks orientate the farmer, get them trained to understand all the requirements, the rigor around organic certification. And like I said, these folks are all very tech savvy and well educated. Just fast forward to harvest. Here is another cooperative where the president is writing code numbers on each bag. And I just wanted to reinforce the fact that there's a tremendous amount of diligence and rigor into the organic certification. In this particular cooperative, they posted every farmer's certification sheets on a panel out by the road, so everyone could see what everybody else is doing and keep it totally transparent and above board. Gives me a lot of confidence. If you're a buyer in Europe wanting to buy organic rice from Cambodia, I would have 100% confidence that it's all very legitimate. Within the first couple of weeks, I also got out to a research farm. Here there was 33 varieties as performance trials. I won't spend a lot of time at that, but what it reinforced in my mind, and after talking to quite a number of farmers, you notice I noted the pH at this research farm was only 4.9. And from a good agrology point of view, you want to see a pH in the 6 to 7 range so that you can have better root growth, better plant growth, and so on. So 4.9 is very, very low. And in talking to farmers and staff, no one knew what the pH of their soil was. There wasn't any services or facilities to test soil. And in talking about fertility, the same kinds of answers. There just simply wasn't awareness, no fault of their own, but there had never been any services available for farmers to test their soil for nutrients, organic matter, and some of the standard things that we're familiar with in the Western world. And so I delved into the literature because I wanted to see what scientists had been saying. And even though this is all through Cambodia, the acreage hasn't increased a whole lot for rice growing. The production and the yield has increased dramatically. And so the intensification of agriculture has really increased, and that's putting extra pressure on the soils. A lot of the rice fields are growing rice on rice, and they've been doing that for 40 years continuously. So the organic matter is declining. The acidity of the soil is going up, getting closer to that 4.9 that we saw. And so there are interventions that can be adopted to start to address some of the decline in soil quality that they're seeing from the continuous rice on rice. One of those interventions is growing of a legume cover crop. A legume, of course, puts nitrogen into the soil, and of course also provides organic matter and increases the microbial activity. So again, looking at the literature, there's some tremendous support for implementing these cover crops between the rice crops. When the harvest is done in, say, November, December, get the cover crop in, let it grow through the winter, and by spring, it can be up to your waist and up to your shoulders. So there's a tremendous amount of organic matter that can go back in. So the literature is pretty clear on the improvements that can be made. I won't spend a lot of time on that, but it's interesting. One day there was about 8 bags of cover crop seed showed up on our office floor, and it was dispersed out among the field staff. This young lady here on the motorbike, she's 2 hours one way, and here she's taking one of these 30-kilogram seed bags back with her to her local commune. So there's a lot of interest and diligence on cover crops. The Rice Union sent me some data here recently. It shows over a 3-year period, several varieties that they've tested. And it shows the biomass contribution that these varieties are making to the soil. So it's very clear that over time, at the research farm, they did some economic analysis to show that with rice on rice, the farmers were netting a gross profit of about $388 per hectare. Putting in a legume cover crop improved that to $526 per hectare. And then doing some other soil amendments and inserting a peanut crop between the rice crops, they could bump that up to $820 per hectare. So there's ongoing work in this area on the research farm, and stay tuned. But one of my assignments was to look at how they can improve the profit of the farmers. And so these kinds of indicators show some very, very good promise. Prix-Vihir province is very diverse. There's probably about 150,000 hectares of farmland currently, but there's a tremendous amount of potential. Just about every any type of crop could be grown there. There's 219 water reservoirs, a tremendous opportunity for irrigation. And so with the diversity of the landscape, these would be one of the things that we would be looking at in terms of other crops. I did investigate growing potatoes, because potatoes have really taken off in acreage or hectareage in China and Vietnam. But in Cambodia, potatoes have not done well because the nighttime temperatures are too high. And so the science doesn't support it, but I also am aware of the fact that plant breeders are developing new varieties. And some of these varieties will do much, much better in drier desert conditions, higher temperatures, and with climate change. These are the things that need to be looked at. So I tried to arrange some new seed potatoes from a plant breeder in Vietnam, but unfortunately, logistics, we couldn't get it shipped this year. But I'm optimistic that in the future we can introduce potatoes and have some experimental plots go in. And so I'm encouraging that as we move forward. Sesame is also an alternate crop that we are looking at. And this lady here on the right, she has tried sesame for the first time. The soil is a little rough here, but this is actually one of the first crops that are put into this field after it was cleared of trees.
Harold, sorry to interrupt. You have a couple of minutes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. I think I'll make it. So before I left, I introduced pH paper as a means of testing soil, testing the pH for soil. pH paper is available at pharmacies, especially in the urban centers, and it's very cheap and very easy using pH paper and distilled water. So we had a little demonstration with the field staff, and I left that about 150 pH strips with them so they can test soil into the future. Fairly straightforward process. So, and finally, in wondering about lasting benefits or lasting effects from a 3-month term, I had 8 recommendations that I included in my final report. And for each recommendation, I developed a 1-page discussion paper that staff could introduce at any point in time in workshops or seminars and get people talking and get the discussion going. I know there's not capital available right now for an infrastructure for soil testing, but let's get the conversation going, and somewhere down the road, these recommendations then can be looked at and perhaps implemented with the right resources. So I thought when finishing off, I had to at least include one video of rice harvest. This is a typical rice harvester. all collected in 100 kg bags, and then it goes to a warehouse. And at the warehouse, each bag is weighed. They test it for quality. And again, this is the organic rice that has special certification and a lot of rigor around its transport. So here you see them lifting these heavy bags, 100 kg, and weighing, and people are writing down the important information about it. And then we say, walking the plank. I did not try or attempt to do that. So that's it. I'll finish off then again and thank all those who were involved in my logistics, my lodging, and travel. It was just an absolutely wonderful, wonderful experience. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Harold. That was so interesting. Your work in Cambodia really shows how powerful it can be when farmers have access to these really simple, low-cost tools that help them understand their soil and also adapt to climate change. So a really inspiring example of practical innovation at work. Thank you. So now we'll turn to Kenya. So Donald, if you want to go ahead and share your screen.
Hello, everyone. This is my talk from Kenya, and I worked on dairy farms, which was in about the central area in the highlands of Kenya. So this is going here. This just shows the cows. People had between 1 to 16 cows. There's 8,500 dairy farmers on Wakalima Dairy. So they had 9 extension agents. And in the time I was there, I went out with each of the agents and we talked about manure management, water management, and we also talked about soil pH. This just shows the milk being delivered. So 3 times a day, there isn't cooling on the farm. So 3 times a day, the farmers take the milk out to motorcycles, and then the milk is then transferred to the processing plant where there's a number of lines, almost a fairly modern plant inside. And there's a number of lines working. One of the lines that's putting out the largest amount of milk is the ultra high temperature milk that is distributed in the communities in the large cities. So the cows are fed Napier grass and maize, and also some off-farm inputs. And we see here one of the farmers standing beside his Napier grass, a very healthy grass that's growing very well. They will crop it. One of our advices is to crop it early in the process so it's high in protein. And on the other side, we see a person standing by a very fertile, very well-growing crop of corn. But there are a number of challenges here. And as we got out to the farms, we saw poor soil conditions. They were not very drought tolerant, low fertility, and low soil pH. So we worked with the farmers, and we had 13 trainings and 31 farm visits. This was over a 3-week period, so it was quite busy. And we talked about all the different aspects for them to improve their crop fertility and basically complete the cycle between the cows to the manure to the fields to the crops back to the cows, and to do that in a manner that they could reduce the cost of commercial fertilizer being brought into the farm, and to basically live off to have a cycle on the farm. The farmers were very interested. We had many discussions and were very interested in all the different ways that they could to improve their this cycle on the farm. So the one way is passive soil composting. And you see, so a compost will improve the soil structure and it maintains the nutrients. The nutrients remain in the compost and it's spread out to the farmland. We talked to the farmers about setting up passive soil composting systems. So, and what you need to have good compost. So you need manure, you need nitrogen, you need a carbon source, you need air. You need to have it in an aerobic manner. And so what we talked about, and there's a picture there, and you see this post going up, and we talked about laying out sticks in the ground, and that would create an air hole for air to come underneath the pile. Then you put layers of manure, you put layers of organic matter such as leaves, paper, manure, and you end up with a pile that's about 3 meters high. And then once you're done building the pile, you take out the pole in the center, and that creates a hole in the center for the air to go through. So you will get very rapid composting, and in about 3 months or less, you will have a fully composted black type of peat moss type of soils that can be applied onto the land. And we talked about the rates to put it onto the soils to get good crop growth and to see if any other fertility is required to maintain your crop growth. Also talked about biogas. So on the left-hand side, you see a biogas plant that was installed on the farm. So they are milking 2 to 3 cows, and they add manure to the one end of the biogas plant, and it slowly works its way through the biogas plant or the biogas bag and comes out the other end as a biogas slurry. So the biogas plant has a number of advantages. It will produce biogas. The biogas is piped to their homes, and they replace firewood that is burned inside the homes. So that reduces the amount of firewood, the deforestation that's occurring in the countryside. Also greatly improves the air quality in the home because you're burning biogas or natural gas instead of burning smoky wood. But on the other side, and we've been installing a number of biogas plants over the years, and one thing I did notice is that the digestate, or what comes out the biogas plant, is not being utilized as well as it could be. And you see on the right-hand side, that is a tank full of digestate. And we talked to the farmers and we talked about getting that digestate evenly spread on their farmland. And basically, they're either taking hoses or they're taking buckets. And for every square meter of maize or corn or Napier grass, they're putting on about 6 liters of this biogas slurry. And that gives most of the fertility, especially the nitrogen, to get very good crop growth. And farmers have been starting to do that, and they're getting very good results. We saw a crop earlier that was quite high, and that is a crop that was fertilized with biogas slurry. So we talked about that with the farmers. They were very interested in how to do it, how much to apply, and fitting this into their farming process. We talked about applying compost or biogas slurry evenly. So there's a site there. They're just setting up the field to grow Napier grass. So Napier grass is a perennial grass that's planted. They start by first producing the compost. Then the compost is carried out to the field. They weigh how much compost is to be applied to each hole where they're going to plant the Napier grass, which they're growing in a germination area on the other side of the farm.
Donald, sorry to interrupt you. You have a couple of minutes left, just to let you know.
We talked about water conservation and nutrient storage. So there is there is a line. This is a sandy type soil or volcanic soil, so you have to line they're running liquids off of their farmstead. Any juices that run off their manure pile is also being added to liquids, and that is then being applied to the land. And the farmers also, it's quite interesting because the dairy farms also grow coffee, and so they too were very interested in soil pH testing. So I also worked on a soil pH testing program with the farmers, and to know how much lime they need to apply. And we all talked to the farmers, and this is actually a project, a biogas plant that was installed a few years ago, and again on what the attributes and positive attributes of that biogas plant. So I'd just like to thank VIB and Global Affairs Canada for giving me the opportunity to share my knowledge. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Donald. So interesting. And I really appreciate how you connected composting and biogas systems to more broader concepts like circular farming and sustainability. Yeah, it's so encouraging to see how these small changes can really create ripple effects for farms and ecosystems. So thank you so much. And now we are going to travel to Laos. Over to you, Alina.
Give it a second. The internet is sometimes a little bit iffy, so but I think we're good right now. So thank you, Katya, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about One Health in Laos. So yeah, I'm a veterinarian from Ontario. I worked in both large and small animal practice in Canada, and I'm currently on my second placement with Care Laos as a One Health advisor. So just a little intro about Care, and I just have notes next to me here, so if you see me looking over, that's why. So Care Laos is part of the overarching Care International. It's an NGO that's dedicated to ending poverty through providing people with the skills to perform dignified work and enhance their livelihoods, with a particular focus on women. So their target program areas are women's health, women's economic empowerment, and then as well as an area for emergencies and humanitarian action. So there's many projects at Care Laos. You can see here in the map, it's in several provinces across the country. I think currently there's close to 12 projects going on. So very busy country office. And every single project has the focus of gender equality, regardless of whether it's focused on climate sustainability or whatever other area. Gender equality is always really important. So I'll tie that back in. I'll just talk about One Health briefly. So it's become a bit of a catchphrase nowadays. I'm sure most of you have heard of it, especially after COVID-19, but essentially it's the idea that human health, animal health, and ecosystem health are all interrelated. So for example, this is an example diagram. A way that we're all related is through our food webs. So obviously our food and animal food comes from the planet. Any kind of environmental contaminants, anything that's going wrong in the ecosystems that surround us will also cause these toxins to leach into our food and cause disease that then can be transferred between animals and humans through zoonotic pathogens. So at its core, One Health tries to solve incredibly complex problems. For example, the climate change crisis, that is a very complex problem that needs One Health solutions. So some of the key aspects of One Health solutions are these four in the middle. So communication, collaboration, coordination, and capacity building. So the idea is to tackle problems from a top-down approach. Not from a top-down approach, from a grassroots approach. So instead of a top-down approach where, academic opinions might be a little bit more valued than others, we try to look at it from a grassroots approach where we take things like traditional knowledge. We really listen to communities to be able to come up with community-based solutions that are going to be sustainable in the long run. And another aspect that I like to mention about One Health is the idea of transdisciplinarity. So that's just the idea that you have all of these different disciplines that are all working collaboratively. And sometimes, sometimes you're working outside of your discipline. So I'm a vet who's working or doing a lot of gender work here in Laos. That's not necessarily my main area of focus in my work, but it is, it's this like very collaborative transdisciplinary action that we do. And one last thing about One Health specifically is I always like to bring up the social determinants of health. So these are aspects of somebody's life that determine how well they're going to be able to succeed in our built society. And this is reflected in a lot of CARES projects. So these factors can't always be controlled. For example, like environmental conditions, discriminatory practices, housing instability, all of these things are, they're really going to determine how well somebody does in society, but many times they're handed to somebody based on their socioeconomic position or the socioeconomic position of their family. So why this matters, tying it back to care, CARES project areas are in communities that are really vulnerable. They don't have a high capacity to adapt to things like climate change. And this is because the main issues that affect their development are the ones I listed there. So food insecurity and unstable income particularly come from the fact that these communities are kind of based around subsistence farming, especially of seasonal crops. So if the crops fail for whatever reason, whether it's droughts, flooding, pests, that really affects the food security and the income of that community. Also, the infrastructure is a huge thing here in Laos. So especially in rural areas, the roads are often, they're not paved. So they're often in poor condition. And especially during the rainy season, there can be a lot of landslides, a lot of flooding, which impedes access to education, healthcare, and markets also. And then another thing is just also the power dynamics that can that exist in Lao culture. So a lot of the rural villages have very specific gender norms where men are more in control of money and decision making. So this affects women's opportunities. So the cross-cutting theme across all of this is health in every single one of its forms. So not just physical health, but also social health, economic health, and so on. So as a brief example, if you have a Lao girl living in one of the rural villages, in an ideal situation, she will go to school and she will gain literacy and financial skills and also confidence. And this will allow her to get a secure job, secure income, access to healthcare, access to housing and food. And all of these things will give her the capacity to adapt to climate change, which is one of the crises that's going on in the world. Now, the barriers that I mentioned before are very present in a lot of rural villages, and they can impede this young girl from going to school. So, for example, if there's a lack of food, or if the community doesn't have water, or if there's just a climate disaster that is causing food and water insecurity, girls are expected to help either forage for food or go get water or whatever it is. And so they're the first ones who are going to be pulled out of school to do this. In addition, with infrastructure, again, if the roads are flooded and the kids just simply can't get to school because there's just landslides and it's not passable. And then in terms of disease, there can often be lack of access to health services, whether it's because of infrastructure or because of economic instability as well. So if there isn't enough money for food, there's probably not enough money for healthcare. So the takeaway is that there's very little wiggle room to deal with a crisis, such as a climate change disaster. And so this is where CARE applies One Health solutions. So the project I'll talk about is the WEAC project. It stands for Empowering Communities Through Participatory Climate Actions. It takes place in northern Laos, and this is a project I'm working very closely with. So its objectives are to promote sustainable agricultural practices and provide skills to foster climate resilient livelihoods. And then also importantly, to promote the participation and financial empowerment of women. So this is done through gender equality trainings, the creation of village savings and loans associations, and all of this enhances the financial literacy and ownership in women. So as a result, women in these villages, they have improved food security, access to education, education, access to healthcare, improve confidence for all of this as well. And this benefits their entire community. Other things that are happening with the WEAC project as well is each village actually comes up with a community adaptation plan, they call it. So this is where they look at what specific activities, like climate smart and climate resilient livelihood activities, they would like to be trained in, or if they already have them happening in their area, then they can kind of like be enhanced and have more support. And these are very, very tailored to the community. So they have a list of, I don't know how many, but they have a list of many that they can pick from, and they decide, you know, within their community which ones they want. So this can be things like vegetable gardens and climate smart planting techniques, things like fruit tree intercropping, which is similar to the previous talks of planting different crops with each other to improve soil health, strengthening weather information networks, again, to help with the planting calendar. Improving the water supply is a big one as well. And then livestock management and veterinary services, which is kind of where I come in a little bit. So these are just examples of photos taken from the field of one of the women reading a water meter. This man was preparing feed for his cows. And then the photo there is of one of the gardens. So the WEAC project is a 4-year-long project, and activities are mostly carried out by care staff and the local partners in the field. And I just want to highlight how, like, the amount of incredible coordination and effort that has to happen to have projects like these happening on the ground. So it's not just like, oh, we go and we implement activities, or, you know, the care staff goes and implements activities. You have to start from collecting baseline knowledge on the community and where they're at, where's the knowledge at, what resources do they currently have. And then you use that knowledge to design activities and implement the trainings. And then there's ongoing monitoring throughout the entire process, right? And so it's just, it's a lot of work, and I'm constantly in awe of my coworkers at like just the coordination that has to happen to have these activities take place. So just really quick at the end here. So what's the VETS role in One Health? We are positioned to tackle both physical health challenges and social health challenges, because we do have training in both medicine and social relationship building. Shout out to our Art of Veterinary Medicine class in vet school, if anybody is from OBC. But essentially, so what I've been doing is 2 types of training. So trainings on animal health, which cover things like biosecurity, livestock management and feeding, and disease prevention. And then also workshops on gender equality. So talking about things such as the difference between biological sex and gender, traditional gender norms, gender-based violence, those sorts of things. And so it's a really cool area to be working in, because like I said before, I get to work in my field, but also I get to delve into this kind of like gender equality work that is really, really, close to my heart, even though I don't have like formal training in it. I lean a lot on my coworkers, and we really like support each other in areas where we're a little bit less strong, to really bring these trainings to life. And that's the scope of a One Health project, right? Is this like transdisciplinarity that I was talking about before. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Kopchaide means thank you in Laos. And I also have my email here in case anybody has further questions or wants to chat or anything else.
Super. Thank you so much, Alina. So interesting. And I feel like your reflections on like One Health in action and how it's applied at the community level in Laos just really highlights why integrated people-centered solutions are so important in our environmental work. So thank you for sharing that and your experience in Laos so far. Hope your second placement is going well. Great. So we actually have about 10 minutes for a live Q&A session. So if you haven't already, please post your questions in the Q&A box. So again, should be at the bottom of your screen. It's the little box with the question mark. And you can ask general questions or direct it at any of our panelists. So let me have a look and see. Yeah, so actually we have an interesting question for Harold, which ties into maybe what Alina has been talking about with regards to gender equality, gender equity in Laos. So curious to know, Harold, what you observed about gender equality, equity in Cambodia. It was similar to Laos or
Yeah.
different?
Mhm. Well, certainly women are very engaged in agriculture and in every aspects of it. Within the rice cooperative, of the 5,000 membership, I believe 3,000 members are women. The other interesting thing that I came across in my literature search, and of course would probably be well known among the Cambodians, but the Ministry of Women's Affairs of Cambodia established policy in 2017 with 3 pillars designed to narrow the gender gap. Institutional reforms through effective policy development, behavioral change through media mobilization and youth engagement, and promotion of women in decision-making roles. So I think Cambodia is very progressive. There's always work that can be done, but I was extremely pleased to see the role, the gender equality that was very evident on the farms, and was evident certainly within the organizations that I work with as well.
Yeah, thanks, Harold. It's always great when you hear that something in theory, so the 3 pillars are actually happening in practice as well. So yeah, thanks for sharing your observations. Okay, we have a question for Dawn. So seeing as it's World Environment Day, Dawn, can you share how farmers in Kenya are really addressing, because there's so much either drought or flooding, one extreme or the other, that the farmers are having to deal with. And so what have been your observations in how they're coping and dealing with that and maybe mitigating some of those effects?
Yes, well, the best way, one of the best ways, or the first way that you should be doing is improving your soil structure. So by maybe installing small terraces, by adding compost, by growing crops such as legumes to improve the nutrients and improve the soil structure. So we're looking at ways to capture all the water from a farmstead, including some of the nutrients that are lost, and then spreading that as a water source and a nutrient source in the land, which normally is located below where the farmstead is located.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, interesting to hear, because like, I guess also tying into what Alina was saying, there's always such a small margin, right, to implement some of those practices. So good that there's some simple things as well that can be done. So thanks, Dawn. So Alina, I have a question for you in the Q&A here, which actually ties in nicely also to the VETS program. So we're always looking to see how these programs, like the one that you talked about at CARE, are long-term and sustainable, so that the effects are not just seen while the activities are being implemented, but rather that all those practices are long-term and showing long-term impact. So I guess curious to know how you ensure that these projects have sustainable impact even after the project is finished.
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. So I think a big part of it is definitely this like monitoring that I was talking about before. So most projects have like their kind of like baseline report for the conditions, I guess, and the knowledge that's present in the villages and the communities at baseline, but they also have midterm reports and end-term reports. And I in my opinion, I would say that the midterm report is one of the most important ones, because this is when you're really noticing, like, is there change being made in the community? And if so, like, is it exactly what the community wants? Can they sustain it? Can they sustain it themselves? And it also goes back a lot to the whole taking a very like grassroots, like community-based approach, right? So we're essentially like, these projects come into communities as resources, both monetary resources and knowledge-based resources. So there's, obviously the money from donors and, the funding and everything, but the technical aspect of the knowledge that comes with these projects is a really valuable resource. But at the end of the day, they have to be really tailored to every specific village. And I would even argue that like neighboring villages might have very different needs. They might have very different capacities for what they can sustain after the project. So, really tailoring the activities, the trainings, and things like that to the specific villages is super, super important for lasting impact. And then thirdly, I would also say that CARE specifically focuses a lot on this concept of training of trainers. And that's something that I'm trying to focus a lot on during this placement as well, where, the idea isn't necessarily to go and, so for example, for my vet trainings, like when I teach about livestock health, livestock management. Yes, it's great if I can go and teach the farmers or the village vets directly, but it's even better in a way if I can teach not only the CARE staff, but a lot of the local partners that they work with, whether it's like government partners or civil society organizations, because at the end of the day, like they're the ones who are on the ground who will continue to carry on these trainings, continue to carry on this knowledge. So this concept of training of trainers is super important because, yeah, you're not just training the community, but you're training people who can carry on these trainings for the duration of the project and hopefully for other projects that might have similar activities. So yeah, I'd say those are kind of like some of the ways that you measure sustainable impact, because it's definitely the goal of all of this. You don't want to just come in, give the money, and then like leave, because that's not how it works.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Alina. And I think you just really summarized the VETS program as well, and the approach of the VETS program, which is all about capacity building. So yourself and Don and Harold would have done exactly what you were just saying, a lot of train the trainers, not just for the partner staff, but their partners as well and stakeholders, so that exactly like you said, they can continue to share that knowledge and expertise that you have shared with them as an ongoing. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that. And I guess maybe just one question either for Don or for Harold. I guess it's in line with sustainability as well. So you talk about the sustainability of the project, but I'm also wondering, somebody's posted here about whether farmers can be self-sufficient. So the question is specifically about nutrients in the soil. So yeah, I don't know if Don or Harold, you want to take that question, but did you see in your placements whether farmers were in a position to balance their own soils by using their own resources?
I guess
Well,
the one answer to that is that as you're sending a lot of nutrients out in milk or in meat from your farm or coffee, then you may have to bring some of the nutrients, you may have to purchase some nutrients to be brought back. However, that using techniques to maximize nutrients, such as using legumes to produce nitrogen for the farm, you can improve that balance. Carol, do you have comments?
Well, certainly in Cambodia, they're in their infancy in terms of identifying even what nutrients may be required. And then secondly, even being able to acquire nutrients. They talk about organic farmers being organic by default, simply because there never has been any outside resources to apply to their fields. So, that's a very early stage. I tried to get the conversation going about the importance of measuring fertility and nutrient management, and then from there they can work on trying to get whatever deficiencies might show up. They would have to be shipped in, but there has been some interest in bringing in some bag fertilizer, and I would think that over time that'll become more readily available as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Don and Harold. So we're nearly at the end. I guess there's one last question here on the Q&A for all of the panelists. So just curious to know, maybe very briefly, what the key strength of the VETS program is in your experience, because as you know, we're still ongoing and still looking for more volunteers. So maybe how you feel the program impacted you and the communities that you worked with.
Well, in my perspective, I got right out to the people, the farmers and the extension staff that we could give the message to. So the vets coordinated that process and facilitated that process so you could work directly with your clients.
Very much agree. Right from start to finish, all the logistics, the travel, making the connections was all organized by vets, or certainly with their partner, the Agronomes, Vétérinaires Sans Frontières, located right within Cambodia. And then the rice union took over, so it made it hassle-free to become engaged in this activity, and I didn't have to worry too much about any of that. So I immediately delved into, what the issues were, what my assignment was, and did the literature search and was able to write up a report that hopefully will be beneficial for those local people down the road.
I think I would agree with both Donald and Harold, and in terms of like the logistics, but also I think, and specifically with Care Laos, because as I mentioned, like there's so many projects going on at Care, and I think it's really neat how in this situation the vets funding that that Care Laos gets through the volunteers being here. There's 2 other volunteers who are currently at Care Laos in addition to myself. It's not necessarily tied to one specific project or one specific area. And so I think it's really cool how, the three of us who are there are able to come in and talk with all of the care staff, who is, truly like the local partner here, and kind of decide where best to allocate the vets funding in order to support their projects, whether it is something that's related to climate change or livestock, or whatever our area of expertise is, or whether it's one of the different projects that we can still support, but perhaps in a more creative kind of fashion. Yeah, I think it's really cool how we're able to be flexible that way, and really make sure that the funds are properly allocated.
Great, thank you so much, Dawn and Alina and Harold, for sharing your time, your insights, and passion with us today. It really comes across when you're talking about the work that you've done and that you're doing. And also thank you to our audience for being part of this really important conversation. So we hope that today's discussion has given you a glimpse of what's possible when we invest in grassroots innovations and support local leadership and really work together across disciplines and border. So a recording of this webinar will be shared soon by email and also will be on our website at vwb.org. So please feel free to share it with colleagues or friends who might be interested. And we also encourage you to stay engaged with our One Health work and other VWB projects by visiting our website or subscribing to our newsletter and keeping an eye out for upcoming events. So on behalf of all of us at Veterinarians Without Borders, thank you again for joining us, and we really hope to see you at a future webinar. Take care and happy World Environment Day.